반갑습니다. My name is Seung-Kyung Kim. I am Korea Foundation Professor in the Department of East Asian Languages and Cultures and Director of the Institute for Korean Studies. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the opening of the Institute for Korean Studies. I was appointed to the position at the start of this academic year and moved to Bloomington in December. The main reason why I moved to IU after teaching at the University of Maryland College Park for 25 years has everything to do with promoting and expanding Korean studies in the US and the world. And our beginning is auspicious indeed. Thank you, President Michael McRobbie and Dean Lee Feinstein, for making the Institute possible. Thank you, Korea Foundation and Korean alums for making my position and the Institute possible. Thank you, Academy of Korean Studies, for awarding a core university program grant and also for funding to fund our really wonderful conference today. And with this AKS's funding of a core university program grant, we will position IU as a regional hub for Korean studies in the US. Thanks also to the generous support from the university, the Institute has also been able to hire Dr. John Finch as Associate Director and Dr. Susan Blake as Assistant Director. The Institute for Korean Studies at Indiana University promotes interdisciplinary approaches to the understanding of Korea on campus and beyond. The Institute advances cultural fluency through providing programs for students, faculty, and the community, and expands public understanding of Korea. We examine the role of Korea and Koreans, including overseas Koreans, in the world. As part of the School of Global and International Studies, we put equal emphasis on cultural fluency and on applied social policy. We have just concluded our inaugural conference, Peace Corps Volunteers and the Making of Korean Studies in the US. So some of you have heard this before. The conference was a landmark event which gave participants an opportunity to appreciate how the field has grown and flourished over the past half century. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Peace Corps Korea program. The Peace Corps Korea program began in 1966, and from then until it finished in 1981, it brought nearly 2,000 young American volunteers to live and work in Korea as English teachers, health workers, or other support staff. Through their close contact with Korea and its people, many Peace Corps volunteers became deeply interested in the country's culture and history. Many volunteers expanded on this interest after their return to the US with the further study of Korean language, anthropology, history, or literature in American graduate schools. Up to that time, the scholarship that existed about Korea in the English-speaking world had been produced by missionaries or by people from the US military during and after the Korean War. Peace Corps Korea provided a large influx of talent into this small pool of Korean studies interest. The Peace Corps' self-conscious policy of forcing a direct and unmediated encounter with Korea began what might be thought of as a preliminary training for later academic studies. Language learning, deep and intense cross-cultural interaction, and the concomitant building of interpersonal ties between volunteers and their Korean hosts and co-workers developed a skill set that both motivated and facilitated the subsequent formal study of Korean society. The Peace Corps volunteers who returned to the US in the late 1960s and 1970s and entered graduate programs also arrived at a fortuitous moment in the history of US universities. The US government had begun funding area studies in order to create a pool of expertise in foreign languages, cultures, and politics. While Korea was overshadowed by China and Japan in the study of East Asia, nonetheless, a number of returned Peace Corps volunteers were able to obtain PhDs in literature, history, anthropology, and get jobs in the academy and beyond. They went on to train later cohorts of graduate students, including myself, develop original curricula on Korea, and sit on committees for fellowships and field development. These returned Peace Corps volunteers are currently a major component of the senior cohort of Korean Studies scholars in the US. The objectives of the conference are to gather the recollections of these scholars about their careers in Korean studies and how their time in the Peace Corps provided the foundations for those careers, to learn about how this cohort of Korean studies scholars built the field, and to learn their ideas for future directions in Korean studies. And we had 11 marvelous presentations in the morning by historians and in the afternoon by anthropologists and the scholars of literature, and had the kind of exchange in a way that people appreciate what they hear and also what they want to engage in. And tomorrow morning, we are gathering again for about 2 hours to talk about how we are going to have these collections into a publication. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the founding dean of the Global and International Studies, Lee Feinstein. Dean Feinstein's experience of more than 2 decades in high-level positions in diplomacy and foreign affairs included serving as U.S. ambassador to Poland from 2009 to 2013. He has been instrumental in developing the Institute for Korean Studies, and I am grateful for his strong support of our work. Welcome.
Professor Kim, thank you so much. Congratulations to you and to your colleagues on the reports of this morning's conference. Thank you for what you've done in a short amount of time to consolidate the position of the Institute for Korean Studies, the School of Global and International Studies, and Indiana University as a national leader in Korean studies. We're grateful to you, and we look forward to your continued success in ensuring that Korean studies assumes its rightful place in the United States and globally. This morning's news only underscores the importance of what you're doing. The unsuccessful effort over more than a generation to contain North Korea's nuclear ambitions is testimony to the need for the scholarship that are trademarks of SGIS and of the Institute. The American Academy of Arts and Sciences reported recently that there's often an empty seat around the policy table in Washington, D.C. And that's the seat where genuine regional expertise resides, or should reside. Deep regional understanding of society's history, culture, linguistic traditions, bolstered by expertise in security, politics, and international relations. That's what the Institute and SGIS have been established to do, and I can't think of more important work. And that brings me to my role here this afternoon to give thanks to Professor Kim and also to the many distinguished scholars, diplomats, and philanthropists who are here with us in this auditorium. Today's launch of the Institute is notable because we are fortunate to have with us an extraordinarily large number of the people whose labors and generosities made the Institute possible. First of all, I want to join Professor Kim in thanking President McRobbie. President McRobbie, it's due to your global vision that we are here today, that the Institute is a priority of the university, and that the School of Global and International Studies exists at all. Thank you, and you'll have the privilege of hearing from President McRobbie, cough and voice strength permitting, in a few minutes. But before you do, I'd like to acknowledge some others in the room today. And here, I want to note that these donors aren't merely generous, they're also wise. Richard Haas, my friend and former boss at the Council on Foreign Relations, wrote recently, Asia is where 21st century is going to happen. That's not an original thought, and it's definitely not news to the people in this room. And I'm very proud to be part of a university that as long ago as 1962 gave prominence to Korean studies, becoming the first Midwestern institution to offer Korean language courses. Today, like all of the departments and programs at SGIS, the Institute for Korean Studies explores not just economic and security issues, but also Korea's incredible cultural and artistic contributions to the world. As President Obama said when he met President Park in Laos the other day, South Korea remains the linchpin of peace and security, not just on the Korean Peninsula, but across the region. So we salute the prescience of those institutions and donors who have helped us to launch the Institute, and that will solidify Indiana University's position as a center for the study of Korea. I'd like to start by acknowledging Consul Kyung-hun Kim, who is here representing the Consul General of Korea in Chicago. Next, our most profound thanks to the Korea Foundation, whose professor, Ambassador Si-Hyung Lee, will speak to you shortly. SGIS is founded on the principle that everything connects, and in the small world category, it turns out that both Ambassador Lee and I served as ambassadors to Poland, more or less at the same time. I know that Ambassador Lee is probably not feeling that the world is all that small at the moment, since he's landed here fresh from London by way of DC and is due to return to Korea tomorrow. So we really thank you for your fortitude and the generosity of the Korea Foundation, which endowed the chair that Professor Kim holds. And it means a tremendous amount to us that you've made the trip and paying tribute to the importance of the founding of this institution. Speaking of Professor Kim, she was instrumental in writing grants from the Academy of, winning grants from the Academy of Korean Studies, whom I'd like to thank next. Dr. Bae-young Lee, the president of the Academy, could not join us today, but our gratitude to the Academy is nonetheless deep and profound. Because of the Academy's gift, IU truly will become a hub of Korean studies. And there are two other people I'd like to thank. Both of them are modest people who don't like the limelight, but I'm going to drag them into it for a minute. One of them is Indiana University's own Roy Shin, an emeritus professor and special advisor to President McRobbie, and it is due in no small part to Professor Shin that IU now boasts having 3,600 alumni with Korean ties, and every year we continue to welcome 1,000 Korean students to our campus, as well as sending many of our own students from the United States to Korea to study. Professor Shin has maintained a lifelong friendship with Dr. Se-eung Lee, one of Korea's most distinguished citizens, and it was partly their friendship that inspired Dr. Lee to make generous and important gifts to our institute. Dr. Lee's philanthropy is remarkable. He presides over educational and artistic centers in Korea and has been honored not only by his home country, but by France and Sweden and others. We're proud to join the ranks of those who've benefited from his generosity. And I have the privilege of announcing here, for the first time, an additional generous gift from Dr. Lee, which will establish a distinguished fellowship named in his honor. Well, as you've heard, it's a breathtaking roster of generous people in the room. So let me say in closing that SGIS and Indiana University thank you, one and all, for making this day and this institute possible. We hope to have the benefit of your wise counsel as the institute grows. And now, it's my privilege to turn the podium over to President McRobbie, who has done so much to promote Korean studies on campus. President McRobbie.
Thanks very much, Lee. As Lee alluded to, I'm afraid I'm suffering a cold, and he's going to take over and finish my remarks if I can't finish them. As I'm fond of saying, my having a cold probably makes an Australian accent even more incomprehensible to people, so my apologies for the added difficulty that this may cause you. Well, I want to join the Dean in welcoming all of the distinguished Korea scholars who have travelled to Bloomington for this wonderful inaugural conference of Indiana University's new Institute for Korean Studies. I'm also pleased to join the Dean in welcoming Consul Kyung-Han Kim of the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in Chicago. And of course he is here representing the Consul General who was unable to make it. Also very pleased to join the Dean again and welcoming Mr. Si-Young Lee, who I had the pleasure of spending some time with earlier this afternoon, of course the new president of the Korea Foundation as well. And it is an extraordinarily generous grant from the Korea Foundation and 3 Korean alumni that allowed IU to establish the first endowed chair in Korean studies, and thus greatly assist IU in establishing the institute whose opening we celebrate this afternoon. We're also very grateful to the Korea Foundation and to the alumni donors, and I want to express our thanks again to all of them for their generous gift. I'm also very pleased to welcome Ambassador Thomas Hubbard again, who I had the great pleasure of meeting this afternoon, former United States Ambassador to the Republic of Korea and chair of the Korea Society, which of course works to promote greater understanding and cooperation between the people of the United States and Korea as well. And we look forward to hearing from both of them in just a few moments. I also want to express on behalf of Indiana University our gratitude to Dr. Bae-Young Lee, President of the Academy of Korean Studies, who could not be with us today, again as the Dean pointed out, but has sent her greetings to us and the Academy's support at today's conference and more generally for the IU Institute of Korean Studies. I also want to acknowledge Sheila Crowley, the Acting Associate Director for Volunteer Recruitment with the Peace Corps. And IU Bloomington, as I think many of you know, ranks 7th in the country in terms of the number of alumni who serve in the Peace Corps. I mean, really quite a remarkable figure. And IU is proud to partner in a number of areas with such a distinguished organisation that promotes peace, intercultural understanding, and a lifetime commitment to public service. And also, finally, I want to join the Dean in thanking Professor Shin. Roy and I have been to Korea together a number of times, and I can testify directly as to all that Roy has done to support the formation of this centre. Over the course of the past 30 years, I've had the great pleasure of visiting the dynamic countries of East Asia a total of more than 40 times, including 7 times to the Republic of Korea over 25 years. The first being in 1990, when Korea was a very different place. As most of you know very well, with its rich and eventful history that spans more than 5,000 years, Korea is home to one of the world's oldest cultures. Over the last few decades, Korean society has experienced rapid modernization on an unprecedented scale, with dramatic transformations in its political, economic, and cultural sectors. Today, Korea's economy is the 4th largest in Asia and the 11th largest in the world. It is also among the world's most technologically advanced and digitally connected countries, probably the most digitally connected countries, and is one of the United States' most important strategic and economic partners. For these and many, many other reasons, Korea is a very important focus of study for all who are interested in global issues that confront the world today. Last night's provocative nuclear test by North Korea, in continued defiance of the United Nations, greatly underscores the urgent need for multilateral and collaborative solutions to what are our shared challenges. The resolution of major pressing global issues, including the prevention of the spread of nuclear weapons, requires genuine intercultural and international understanding and competencies in every field. In large measure, the urgent need for graduates with these skills and competencies has led in recent years to Indiana University's commitment to expanding and strengthening its academic programs in Korean studies. Our efforts to do so have been greatly aided by the remarkably generous grant from the Korea Foundation and 3 Korean alumni, which allowed us to establish the endowed chair. This watershed moment in IU's history of international engagement marked the first time that international alumni, in combination with a government organisation, contributed in a major way to supporting academic programs at IU through the funding of a chair focused on their home country, and I hope that we will see this happen in other contexts again. Just over a year ago, we were delighted to announce that Professor Seong Kyung Kim, who has already spoken to you, was hired as the founding Korea Foundation Chair in Korean Studies, and of course as the new director of the founding director of IU's new Institute for Korean Studies. We are also deeply grateful to the Academy of Korean Studies for the generous grants that will help establish IU's institute as a thriving hub for Korean studies in the Midwest. In addition to the support for today's conference, the Academy's grants will also support Korean Studies research at IU and support the further expansion of IU's Korean Studies curriculum. Over the course of several decades, IU's academic programs in area and regional studies and international studies more broadly became widely acknowledged as among the strongest in the country. IU is long ranked among national leaders in externally funded area studies programs, and no other university in the United States teaches more languages. IU's new Institute for Korean Studies will join these programs as a vibrant centre for multidisciplinary research and scholarship about Korea that will benefit IU students as well as scholars and institutions around the world. The new institute will further strengthen Indiana University's deep and extensive ties with Korea. Nearly 4,300 IU alumni are affiliated with Korea. Among them are remarkably successful business leaders, government officials, faculty members at Korea's finest universities, and members of the diplomatic corps. Our Korean alumni are among our finest international ambassadors, and we at IU are very grateful for all they have done to promote and assist the university. In 2009, Indiana University held its International Alumni Conference and Reunion in Seoul. The event was a huge success, with alumni coming from around the world to participate. As a university that ranks 16th in the nation out of about 1,200 American universities who are ranked in terms of the number of students who study abroad, IU continues to collaborate with partners around the world to expand study abroad opportunities for its students, including in Korea. Students from IU's Kelly School of Business, for example, travel to Korea to learn about emerging economic markets. Groups from IU School of Public and Environmental Affairs have travelled to Seoul to study the effects of globalisation on Korea's government, business and non-profit sectors. And last year, student members of IU's Chamber Orchestra in IU's world-renowned Jacobs School of Music, I'm delighted that the Dean is here with us today, travelled to Seoul for a series of wonderful high-profile concerts. I was able to attend them, culminating in a performance at the very prestigious Seoul Arts Centre, which is Korea's foremost art and culture complex. IU also ranks 16th in the nation in terms of the number of international students enrolled. About 9,000 international students are enrolled at IU this academic year, and approximately 1,000 of these are from Korea. And these students, of course, are and have been for many, many decades a vital part of the life of Indiana University. Korea is, in fact, one of the leading countries of origin for international students at IU. Many IU faculty members have extensive research collaborations with faculty members at institutions in Korea. It has been my privilege to meet with leaders of Korea's most distinguished universities to explore ways to build upon the individual collaborations of our faculty in order to create more opportunities for faculty and students. IU's institutional partnerships with Korea's leading universities are among our strongest international research and education partnerships. IU's partnership with Yonsei University, for example, is over 30 years old. We also have agreements in place with Ewha Women's University, Seoul National University, and Sungkwan Kwan University, among others in Korea, and many more throughout Asia. So as Indiana University prepares to celebrate its 200th anniversary in the year 2020, we've launched an extensive range of strategic initiatives that will culminate in our bicentennial year. These initiatives build upon IU's nearly 200 years of excellence in teaching, research and service. And one of our main priorities is to create global leaders. Maybe never in recent times has there been such a need for such global leaders from this country. In an increasingly global society, IU students and graduates must be prepared for all that the world has in store. With new and innovative programs like the Institute for Korean Studies, Indiana University will expand its traditions of international scholarship and outreach and prepare its students to meet the complex challenges of the 21st century. So on behalf of Indiana University, let me once again extend our congratulations and thanks to all who have helped to make the establishment of the Institute possible. And all of us are looking forward, I think, with great anticipation and excitement to witnessing what I'm sure will be the great successes of the Institute in the decades to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President McRobbie, for wonderful welcoming remarks. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the string quartet who will play Springtime in My Hometown. It's variations on a Korean folk song. The music was composed by Ari Fisher, please stand, for the Jacob School of Music Chamber Orchestra for their tour of Seoul last year. For our opening, he arranged it for a string quartet. The members of the quartet are Sun Ha, first violin, Nathaniel Shapiro, second violin, Jin-lo Kim on viola, and Seung-ah Hong on cello. I would like to thank Professor Sung-mi Im of the Jacob School of Music for arranging this performance. Please welcome the members of the string quartet.
I was trying to think how to follow that, but I think the easiest thing to do is to say, wow. Please join me in thanking and congratulating them again. Well, there's one person I did not introduce, and I wanted to save it for now, which is to introduce to you my colleague, a distinguished guest who's been instrumental in supporting U.S.-Korean relations throughout his impressive diplomatic career, Ambassador Tom Hubbard, a career Foreign Service officer for nearly 40 years. He served as U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Korea from 2001 to 2004, and before that as Ambassador to the Philippines from 1996 to 2000. Ambassador Hubbard was a principal negotiator of the 1994 Agreed Framework aimed at ending North Korea's nuclear weapons program. He headed the first senior-level U.S. delegation to North Korea, and he has been involved and continues to be involved in efforts to address security issues on the Korean Peninsula. Ambassador Hubbard is the chairman of the Korea Society in New York City. He's not only a personal friend and colleague, he's also been a friend of SGIS, offering great advice to me and others as we set to establish the Institute, and for that I'm very grateful. I look forward to continued partnership between the Korea Society and the Institute, and I'm really delighted that Tom has agreed to make this trip to Bloomington. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Tom Hubbard.
Well, thank you very much, Lee, for having me here today. And I've been delighted during the course of my time to meet with President McRobbie, to meet with Professor Kim, of course. And I'm really pleased to be joined by an old friend, Ambassador Lee, who's now the president of the Korea Foundation. The Korea Foundation is a good friend of this university, and it's also a very good friend of the Korea Society in New York. And as Lee has said, we do hope that we can find more ways to work together. One of the great things about Korea and working with Korea is you always get to hear good music wonderfully played. And it almost always leaves me speechless and makes it very difficult for me to move into the serious part of my program. But let me just say, it's wonderful to be here as Indiana University's School of Global and International Studies inaugurates its Institute of Korean Studies. Today, Indiana University joins a small but growing number of universities that have both recognized the importance of the Korean Peninsula in geopolitical international affairs and devoted substantial resources to building a challenging course of study that will train the next generation of Korean scholars. Education has long been at the center of the U.S.-Korea relationship, perhaps more at the center of the relationship than with any other country I can think of. Hundreds of thousands of Koreans have studied in the United States since our two countries came into contact with each other at the end of the 19th century. And Koreans remain the third largest group of foreign university students in the U.S., following only China and India with their giant populations. The Peace Corps has, of course, been an enormous source of learning and understanding about Korea, as evidenced by the workshop that took place here today. And apart from the Peace Corps, Christian missionaries before them, many of them have gone to Korea and been part of the creation of wonderful universities like Yonsei and Ewha University, and that's an important part of a unique legacy, I believe. But beyond that, I think in recent years, most of our educational exchange has principally involved Koreans coming to the United States to study. And so I'm very glad that we're seeing more and more universities like Indiana University give Americans a chance at home and in all parts of our country to study about Korea. And I have no doubt that in the future, IU's Korean Studies graduates will be at the forefront of our important relationship with the two Koreas, whether contributing to the growing academic canon or crafting critical policy proposals. I'm not myself a trained Korean scholar by any means, and I only had the privilege of dealing directly with the Korean Peninsula toward the end of my diplomatic career. But as Lee Feinstein has said, I have been deeply engaged with both Koreas for nearly 25 years now. During the 1990s, I participated in several crucial negotiations with North Korea, including negotiating the 1994 agreed framework to curb Pyongyang's nuclear weapons programs. I also helped arrange former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright's historic visit to North Korea and have been in Pyongyang on that occasion and another. Because of that, a lot of people used to say, Hubbard may well be the first U.S. ambassador to North Korea. A distinct but dubious honor that might have been. But instead, I was lucky enough to be appointed U.S. ambassador to South Korea in the early 2000s. And that provided me with the opportunity to get to know the wonderful people and culture of Korea and to witness firsthand the economic miracle that catapulted this small former aid recipient to a position of global and regional prominence. South Korea continues to grow as a democracy and economic powerhouse, and the U.S.-ROK alliance has never been more critical as the U.S. seeks to rebalance its resources to the Asia-Pacific region. So the Republic of Korea has been a wonderful story, and the ROK has become a bedrock of stability in Asia. Yet, North Korea continues its outrageous behavior, as we saw in the last 24 hours with their fifth nuclear test, which, from everything I read, seems to have been more successful than the previous tests. Since inheriting power from his father and grandfather in 2011, the young Kim Jong-un has expanded North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile programs, violated numerous United Nations Security Council resolutions, executed many of Pyongyang's elite cadres, including his own uncle, and continued to perpetrate hideous crimes against humanity. Many of the North's 23 million citizens live in poverty, hunger, and isolation. And as North Korea moves inexorably toward a deliverable nuclear weapon, which we think is their principal purpose, the North Korean threat will inevitably be high on the agenda of our next president when he or she takes office. In this regard, I think the most immediate task, an immediate task for our new president will be to promote and maintain confidence in the U.S.-ROK alliance. The U.S. military commitment to the Republic of Korea, bolstered by upwards of 25,000 troops stationed there, is critical to deterring the North Korean threat and central to our presence in the East Asia region. Now, unfortunately, this U.S. presidential election has seen our commitment to our South Korean allies called into question, with one candidate questioning whether it benefits the United States to allocate financial and military resources to the peninsula's defense. He has gone so far as to suggest that we get nothing out of our strong ties to Korea and neighboring Japan, and suggested that he would not be opposed should those two countries develop their own nuclear weapons capabilities. I think this bespeaks a fundamental misunderstanding of how the U.S. benefits from maintaining a physical security presence, not only in Asia, but around the world. Our global military bases do not merely serve the interests of the countries in which they are located. They provide the U.S. with international strategic footholds from which we can safeguard and advance our national interests around the world. The Korean Peninsula is especially important to maintenance, peace, stability, and security in East Asia, and the U.S.-ROK alliance stands ready to deter and protect South Korea and its neighbors from potential North Korean aggression. Now, lest I sound too partisan, unintentionally of course, I should point out that this is not the first time the U.S. troop presence in Korea has been an issue in a U.S. presidential campaign. During his presidential campaign in 1974, Jimmy Carter called for withdrawal of U.S. forces from Korea, causing profound shock on the part of Koreans and our other Asian allies. Fortunately, Carter finally came to his senses and dropped that policy, but it took years and a lot of hard work by our diplomats and others to restore confidence in the alliance. So our next president, with these issues having been raised, whoever it may be, will need to move quickly to restore confidence in this vital military commitment. Now, important though it is, our security relationship with the ROK is just one facet of a very dynamic alliance. The U.S.-South Korea relationship is based on common values and shared prosperity, and we have cultivated deep people-to-people and economic ties over many decades of friendship. A joint vision statement we issued following a recent summit meeting described the U.S.-South Korea relationship as a global partnership, and this is more than simple rhetoric. Our global partnership rests on our shared democratic values, our mutual promotion of free and open economies, and our interest in promoting these values while dealing with problems ranging from development to climate change to public health to non-proliferation. The U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement is another critical element of our relationship that has brought both strategic and economic benefits to both countries. And one of the reasons our relationship has become so strong in recent years is that we have more and more to talk about. South Korea is indeed a crucial partner in every sense of the word, and it is incumbent upon all of us who know and respect Korea to help our next leader ensure that we maintain a vital relationship. I had the privilege this morning of listening to part of the program in which our Peace Corps volunteers shared their insights into the Peace Corps and Korea, and it reminded me of something that probably most Americans don't know. That is that now Korea is not a recipient of Peace Corps volunteers, but one of the largest, I think probably the third largest supplier of Peace Corps volunteers throughout the world. And Korea is really the first U.S. aid recipient to itself become a major donor of aid throughout the world. And I think that's something that all of us ought to be pleased about and proud of. So thank you very much for hearing me today.
Since its establishment in 1991, the Korea Foundation has implemented a variety of public diplomacy activities to help people around the world enhance their understanding of Korea. This Institute for Korean Studies is but one example of their commitment to this goal. We are honored to have with us today the president of the Korea Foundation, Ambassador Shi-Hyung Lee. Before taking this position, President Lee served as ambassador to the Korean permanent delegation to the OECD, as Deputy Minister of Trade, and ambassador to the Republic of Poland, among other distinguished diplomatic positions. We are grateful for the support of the Korea Foundation and that President Lee has traveled to Bloomington to share this special day with us. Please welcome President Lee.
Good afternoon. I frankly was a bit tired before I arrived at your campus. But as soon as I entered campus, I felt I was really re-energized. I was impressed by the beautiful nature of your campus, harmonized with your marvelous buildings. I wish I were young again. I wish I were a student of Indiana University. And more than that, the quartet we've enjoyed personally was the best variation of spring of my hometown I've ever heard in my life. I appreciate all those performances. Well, dear President McRobbie and Ambassador Lee Feinstein and Professor Kim Sung-kyung and Ambassador Hubbard, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Korea who love Korea. It is my great honor and pleasure to join you here today for this auspicious gathering. On behalf of Korea Foundation, I would like to extend my heartiest congratulations on the inauguration of the Institute for Korean Studies at this Indiana University. Well, I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the university's leading role and strong support to enhance Korea studies. Since IU offered the first Korean language courses in 1962, Korean studies at the university has expanded its academic sphere to the humanities and the social science. More recently, the university established an endowed chair in Korean studies in collaboration with the Korea Foundation, and Professor Kim became the founding chair and the director of IU's new Institute on Korean Studies. It was just last year. Moreover, I would like to express my special appreciation for the invaluable contributions and support of the university's alumni in Korea. I would also like to acknowledge IU's faculty, including Professor Hyo-sang Lee, Professor Michael Robinson, and Professor Roy Shin, as well as Professor Kim Sung-kyung, for their passion and efforts to advance Korean studies and promote exchange between Indiana University and the universities in Korea. I'm certain that all of you share in my belief that this inauguration of the Institute for Korean Studies hardly suggests the culmination of our cooperation. On the contrary, this will serve as another cornerstone for our joint efforts to further promote Korea-related research, conferences, and publication activities at Indiana University. I was glad to hear that your conference today on Peace Corps volunteers, the making of Korean studies in the US, was a great success. I'm truly honored to be among such distinguished scholars who laid the foundation and put forth their utmost efforts to promote the development of Korean studies in this country. Many of you served in Korea as Peace Corps volunteers before, and are now serving Korea in another form, namely Korean Studies scholars. Your continued contribution, both as Peace Corps volunteers and Korean Studies scholars, has been strengthening relations between the two peoples of the United States and Korea during the last half a century. In spite of our efforts, mutual understanding between the two countries, in a way, unfortunately, is still limited to certain specific areas. I believe that Korean Studies in the US will be able to play its role in promoting diverse and in-depth understanding of each other and foster future experts who have balanced perspective. I hope the Institute for Korean Studies at Indiana University will play a leading role in the US in filling the gap between where we are and where we want to be. Over the past 25 years, support for Korean Studies has been at the core of Korea Foundation's effort to build an extensive infrastructure to promote understanding of Korea abroad. Thus far, the Foundation's support programs for universities and academic associations have been primarily focused on the region of North Korea. As a result, the Korea Foundation has established 119 professor positions on Korean Studies in 13 countries, among them 74 professorships in the United States. The Korea Foundation has relied heavily on Korean Studies professors and specialists abroad who are at the forefront of efforts to advance Korean Studies, particularly in the United States, where the tradition of area studies is already well entrenched. In this regard, the Foundation foresees that North American universities and academic institutions will continue to serve as a vital sources of success stories, inspiration, and case studies for the universities of other parts of the globe. I look forward to Indiana University's boundless success as a foremost institution in nurturing future world leaders in all fields of study, as well as the continued development of Korean studies. In concluding, I would like to express my gratitude to those who have organized today's gathering. Special thanks to President McRobbie, Professor Kim, and the members of her team who all worked so hard to organize today's gathering to bring us get together here. I wish you all much personal fulfillment in your individual endeavors. I wish our President McRobbie get well soon from his cold. Thank you. 감사합니다.
The Academy of Korean Studies was established to promote the field of Korean studies by supporting in-depth research and education on Korean culture. Their support of our institute, and in particular this conference, will certainly help do just that. We are grateful that their president, Dr. Bae-yong Lee, has taken the time to send her remarks on the occasion of our inauguration. They will be read by Professor Ok Moon from the Academy of Korean Studies. Please welcome Professor Moon.
Dear President Michael McRobbie, Professor Kim, and distinguished guests, it is my great pleasure and privilege to make a few congratulatory remarks on the occasion of the inauguration of the Institute of Korean Studies at Indiana University, which will provide a new momentum for the development and growth of Korean studies in the United States. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Peace Corps, established in 1966, which operated until the year of 1981 in Korea. And in this regard, I believe the theme of the conference, Peace Corps Volunteers and the Making of Korean Studies in the U.S., is meaningful and timely. About 2,000 young volunteers of Peace Corps were sent to Korea, and they experienced the variety of Korean culture and its traditions. Returning to the United States, they became prominent Korean studies scholars and committed themselves to various activities promoting the study of Korean language and culture in the United States. And this conference allows us to look back the historical significance of these endeavors and activities and discuss and share the opinions regarding the prospects of Korean studies with prominent Korean studies scholars from the Peace Corps. I hope and trust this conference will contribute to the development and enrichment of Korean studies in the United States and around the world. I believe Korea and the United States have long shared critical political and economic ties. Given the fact that genuine friendship is possible on the basis of mutual cultural understandings, PCV studies, Korean studies scholars, are pioneers of building genuine relationships between the United States and Korea. I believe it is a time for us, intellectuals in Korea and the United States, as cultural leaders, to collaborate on finding ways to create hope for humanity on the basis of our concerted efforts. I want to express my appreciation to all those here, including Professor Kim, who has worked hard to make this conference possible. And I hope that today's conference will mark and signify the beginning of a new level of cooperation in academic changes and friendship between the Academy of Korean Studies and the Institute of Korean Studies at Indiana University. And please feel free to share your opinions with us on any matter regarding how our relationship can better develop. And I wish all of you, all the participants, good health and hope for the continuous success of Korean studies here. Thank you.
So we will end our ceremony with a performance by the Samulori Korean Percussion Ensemble. Samulori is an indoor adaptation of Korean traditional farmers' music, Pungmul, which was performed outdoors to celebrate good harvests. The 4 percussion instruments used, 2 gongs and 2 drums, represent thunder, rain, wind, and cloud. The performers are all IU students, and what I was just told is they will perform outside in the atrium where we will have our reception too. So thank you very much for coming today and here to the Institute for Korean Studies. Thank you.